we're about to get into the seventh trumpet. So I want to go back over all the sixes. The sixth trumpet and the sixth seal. There's seven altogether. So, right. So here's how God is doing and revealing this to John. He's revealing his plans. When God has a plan for us, we often look at the outside. We look at, let's say you need a job or something, and you're trying to figure out, so I work over there, who's going to hire me? God is looking at what's going to happen at the job when you get there. That's more important to him. So he'll reveal to you the spiritual truth that's going to happen. He'll reveal the spiritual thing behind the physical that we're looking at. So if there's a person you're about to meet, God will show you the spiritual truth behind how that person is going to affect your life. So, and he uses images to teach us and to make points to us. He doesn't want to ever tell us, I don't know why, it's his way, the specific thing. He wants to give you the spiritual truth. So that's why he'll say God is a light. He's like a lamp to my feet. He's not literally a lamp. But we know that light, lamp lead our way. And without the light, you're in darkness, right? So that's the spiritual truth that he's trying to get across. So in the book of Revelation, it's full of spiritual symbols. And we're supposed to try to figure out what is he trying to tell us spiritually about what's about to happen. So he revealed his truth in three different visions. One was there were seven seals, then there were seven trumpets, and seven bowls. Now bowls is what they used to carry all their stuff. Today we use, well not today, but we used to use backpacks. Or while we had fanny packs, you carry all your stuff in a fanny pack or something. They carried all their things in bowls because they learned to work with clay, and that was a big deal. So you would store your stuff in a bowl. So that meant something very significant to them. And you would pour out the bowl. That's how you would feed your kids. You pour out of that bowl into this and into that. So he says, here are seven bowls that I'm going to pour out on the earth. 7 bowls of judgment, or 7 bowls of wrath, or 7 bowls of wisdom. But he's pouring that out onto us. So there's 3 different types of visions where he's layering, like you would layer a 7-dip. You know that 7-dip thing, the layer? You know what I'm talking about? Or a 7-layer casserole, or a 7-layer anything. You put that first layer in. It's all part of that same meal you're going to eat. But you have to put that first layer in, and then the next layer, and the next layer. So, like he's doing 3 different layers, he says, first let me show you these 7 seals. And that's one layer that you'll understand what's going to happen. Then I'm going to reveal another truth covering that same time period. Then I'm going to reveal this third truth covering that same time period. But you can't handle it all at once, so I just have to give you one layer at a time. Wow. So, first thing he did was use 7 seals to unveil what's going to happen. I want to look at the 6th seal, then the 6th trumpet, then the 6th bowl, so that we can see a pattern. The first 4 or 5 seals, the first 4 or 5 trumpets, first 4 or 5 bowls that he pours out, show what's going to happen throughout history from the time that Jesus came the first time to the time he comes the second time. These are the things that are going to lead men to search for God. So, it's like I use this example because I was a teacher. That's my niece-in-law. I use these examples because I was a teacher. I know the final exam is coming. I can look around the room and tell who's been paying attention and who hasn't. When I've been giving lessons, I know who's answering questions and saying, oh, does that mean this? And who's in the back just playing around not paying attention. I look at the little quizzes that I give, and I'm pretty clear on who's going to pass and who's not going to pass. I want everybody to pass, but I can't make them study, and I can't take the test for them. So I've got to give them incentives to study. So as the time draws near for that final exam is coming, and I taught seniors, and I know if they have a fail, they're not going to graduate. For some reason, some people would get serious, and other people, the closer they got to graduation, they just thought it was going to happen automatically. Well, I'll just graduate. I don't need to study. The teacher will just be nice and just give me a passing grade. But I wasn't, as nice as I was, I had no problem failing kids if they didn't earn a passing grade. I wasn't just going to say, well, okay, I'll just be nice. Right, I didn't fail, right, they failed themselves. So I had no problem saying, here's the grade that you earned. It was a fail, because you didn't do anything. I kept giving you, I tried to give you incentives. So,
you can't tell them no more clear than clear, so.
Right, and then it's their choice at that point. And so I said, please, please do your homework. Please, if you just study for this, here's exactly what the questions are going to be in the test. This is exactly, study these answers so that when I give the test, you'll pass. And so, God in the first 4 or 5 trumpets, the first 4 or 5 seals, the first 4 or 5 bowls, is giving incentive to us and saying, judgment time is coming. So I would do things as a teacher to try to, sometimes I would scare them into it, you're going to fail, you better, I would use different incentives. That's what the first 4 or 5 things that God has said that he did between the time Jesus came the first time and the second time. He's saying, here are all the things that are going to happen so that it will be assigned to you that the end is coming. And so, there'll be more wars, there'll be more earthquakes, there'll be more all sorts of stuff so that we will cry out to God. So you go, Lord, what's going on in this earth? We're kind of doing that today. The more that you watch the news, you see, people are going crazy. Right? What is wrong with people? They do stuff that you never heard of before. You think, how did that enter that person's mind to do that? Right? Right, just crazy stuff. So that we would say, we cry out to God. Now, what he does is a lot of worse things could have been happening all along, but God is merciful. But he slowly takes his hand off, like I would. As a teacher, I would sometimes really baby the kids, but I would make the test a little harder and a little harder and a little harder, and not baby them so much. Because in the final exam, they're going to have to, stand for themselves. So you might be more merciful in the beginning, but you're less merciful as time goes on because they really got to see this is a test. So God removes his hand and allows our sin to just envelop us so that we'll look and say, boy, people are, again, all of it is so that we'll cry out. All of it is that so we'll look to God and look to heaven and say, we need a God, but some people just do the opposite. So those are the first 4 or 5 seals, the first 4 or 5 judgments, the first 4 or 5 trumpets. But on the 6th one, the 6th judgment talks about a specific time period of either 3.5 years or 7 years. I think it's 3.5 years, where there will be a worldwide Messiah who will pretend to be able to solve all the world's problems. There will be a lot of tension in the Middle East. He'll be focused in the Middle East. And evangelism will be at an all-time high. People will be out preaching, but also evil will be at an all-time high. And there'll be somebody who will pretend to be a peacemaker. But at the end of his time period, he's going to start a war, a worldwide war. And so that specific time period, I believe that God highlights in the sixth seal, in the sixth trumpet, in the sixth bowl, that during that time period, he talks about this war that's coming between the forces of evil and the forces of God. It's like the final exam, and you'll either pass or you fail based on that. And then will come the new millennium. So I wanted to focus on those as we're about to look at the seventh bowl. I want to just go back over all the six. So the book of Revelation, starting in Revelation chapter 6, verse 12, what has just happened, is we have a vision of the martyrs. We have a vision of the martyrs. What are martyrs? M-A-R-T-Y-R. Anyone else other than Josiah and Joey? You know what a martyr is? Someone who's killed for a cause, is that what you're going to say? So there is a vision of the martyrs, people who have been killed throughout time because they stand up for Jesus. So there are people, martyrs, who have been killed throughout time, because they stood up for Jesus. Now, as we get closer to the end time, the Antichrist, this anti-Messiah, this fake false Messiah, will begin to attack the people of God, and some of them will be killed because they're standing up for Jesus. That's starting to happen more today. It's always happened throughout time, but we're hearing about more and more of it happening in various countries. So there is a limit to how many people will be killed that way. And then Jesus will come back. So he already knows in his mind, okay, I'm going to allow that to go just this far. Now, part of why he doesn't come sooner is because to Jesus, this time on earth is this big, and eternity is this big. So he knows what happens here is important to us, but these people who stood up for him are going to spend eternity with him in heaven. So there's not a hurry for him, because it's like I try to tell my high school students, you're only in high school for these 3 years, or 4 years now. But then the rest of your life, from the time you're 18 until you're 88, the next 70 years, you're going to be out in the world. So you think it's so important to be funny while you're here and to have friends to be good. But what you're doing here is going to really count for the next rest of your life. So try to get it together in high school so you can go into college or whatever, you know. And because I understand, I'm already out in the world. I've already gone on. They've only lived in high school, and they think high school will last forever. But it's not. So I'm really trying to prepare the kids in high school the rest of their life, right? And God's trying to prepare us while we're on earth for the rest of our life. It's going to last forever. So he has a certain number of saints that are going to be martyred. And when it hits that number, he's coming back. So there's a vision right before this vision that we're on the top of, where the saints, where the martyrs are going to the altar and saying, how long, Lord? How long before you come back? And he says, until that number is fulfilled. As soon as that number is fulfilled, then I'm coming back. And then the sixth seal is open. So let's start there. Revelation chapter 6, verse 12 and 13.
And when he opened the sixth seal, behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of her hair, and the moon became like blood. For the great day of his wrath is come, and he was able to sin.
So while all the other things that have been happening are just prompts, they're just God's trying to wake us up. and say, look, I need you to start crying out to God. There is a specific time period called the day of his wrath, when the blasphemy on the earth will have gone to such a peak, and people will have reached a sin. Well, when Jesus says, well, now I've had it up to here, basically, is God saying it's full, and now I'm coming back to end it all. So that's the sixth seal. It's called the day of his wrath. So where he's been trying to wake everybody up with everything else he's been doing, with all the other things he's been seeing in the earth, he's probably been trying to make us cry out to him. Now it's over. When the sixth seal is open, the day of his wrath has come. He's coming back, and he's going to end it all. God, Jesus will appear in the sky and say, okay, everybody out of the pool now. You're messing around too much.
Okay.
Right? And there's always a limit when the adults finally show up and say, okay, that's it. I told you guys to shut up down here in this basement, and I'm trying to get to sleep. Everybody go home, you know. Right? There's that point when the adult shows up and says, that's it. So that's called the great day of his wrath. Let's look at Revelation chapters 7, verse 1 and 3 and 4.
After these things I saw four angels standing at the four corners of the earth, holding the four winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, on the sea, or on any tree. And I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel.
So he has a vision of there's four angels who are holding back the winds. They're holding back because when the winds blow, that's when God's going to really show up. Right now we are hearing, my wife tells a story when they were, she and her cousins were kids. They'd be doing stuff they weren't supposed to be doing in the house while the adults were gone. But they could hear the click of her mother's heels. Her grandmother's heels coming. Uh-oh, we better, and they would try to clean up real fast, right? Yep. And they had a little time period to clean up, but they could hear her heels, and then they knew, we better straighten up, because we have about 30 seconds, and then she's going to come in and lower the boom. So, when the sixth seal is open, he says, the great day of his wrath is coming. Those are the heels clicking on the sidewalk. But before that, he says, I have a vision of God holding back, those four angels holding back the winds, because it's about to blow, but he needs to seal 144,000 Jews first, 12,000 from each of the tribes. And because they, during this 3.5-year time period, will be witnessing. Jerusalem, Israel is going to be the center of activity on the earth, the center of the world's attention. It's heading that way now. It's getting a little bit more volatile right now, where depending, as Israel fully takes over the land, as the Jews, fully take over the land of Israel, it's creating more tension in the nations around them who feel they should not be there. But they're claiming more and more of the land that they felt was given to them. Right now, the Palestinians, now the word Palestinians, does it sound like any other group in the Bible?
No.
Philistine.
Palestinians, Palestines, Palestines, Philistines. They call themselves the Palestinians because they feel they're descended from the Philistines. The Philistines were always the foils, right, for the Israelites. God told them, as soon as they took over the land, he said to one of the tribes, you better take care of those Philistines. Oh, I'm sorry. Even before they went over, when they sent out the spies, they spotted some Philistines and came back and said, ooh, they're giants. And so, but when God sent them in, he said, take care of them. They didn't take care of them. Samson married a Philistine and was fighting with them. Goliath was represented the Philistines. And they've always been this thorn. So they believe we've been here as long as you have, and so we deserve this land. So the Palestinians claim that's why they use that name, because we're descended from the Philistines, and we think this is our land. But as the Jews are moving them out, it's causing tension with the rest of the tribes around them, with the rest of the groups around them. right? And so when they fully take over that area, that will set off like a powder keg and war will begin. So during that time period, when the war begins in the Middle East, there will be 144,000 Jews who will recognize this person who claims to be the Messiah and say, that's not the Messiah. Now, they won't be saying that Jesus is the Messiah, but they'll know that's not the Messiah. That's not the person who's spoken of in the Bible, and they will fight against him. So he's saying, I saw 4 angels hold back the wind. The winds are about to blow. Now, the winds are symbolic. It doesn't mean it's going to be a windy day. But that's symbolic of God's coming in and blowing everything up, right? He says, but the angel held that off because until the 144,000, that may be just a symbolic number, or maybe literally 144,000. But once they are sealed, once that they know and they've committed and we are going to fight and we're here in Jerusalem, and then he said, then that last seal can be opened and that fight can begin, but not until they're sealed. So there's 2 things he's waiting for. He's waiting for the last Christian to be killed, martyred for the cause, and that last Jew to be sealed and know my mission is to fight for the Bible, the God of the Bible. So these are things that God is waiting for to happen before that final day comes. All right, let's look at the 6th trumpet. So that was the 6th seal, the 6th trumpet. When he said, giving all these warnings with the first 5 trumpets, right before the 5th, after the 5th trumpet was sounded, is when the locust came out of the bottomless pit. I told you my opinion, which is just my opinion, it's not in the Bible. It's my opinion that those are helicopters coming out because they're firing on people. But whether they're helicopters or they're locusts, they're big giant locusts who are coming out with men's faces and they're firing at people that are big as horses and are covered with iron. I don't have a problem with the giant. I would run from a giant locust that was as big as a horse. It wouldn't need to be a helicopter. It would shoot fire at me. I'm just as scared. But anyway, they're released from the bottomless pit, and that war begins. And war began. So now the 6th trumpet, Revelation chapter 9, verse 13.
Then the 6th angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar, which is before God, saying to the 6th angel who hath the trumpet, release the 4 angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates. Now the number of the army of the horsemen was 200 million. I heard the number of them.
So those 4 angels, there's 4 angels holding back the 4 winds before God's about to blow. Now there's 4 angels at the river Euphrates, and we looked at the map of the river Euphrates, which goes through Iraq and different countries. Whenever the Israelites were about to be attacked, the armies would line up in the river Euphrates, and then they would cross over and go into Israel. So he says there are 4 angels who are holding back those armies. Release them. Now they can let those armies through. So there's an army that's going to attack Israel in the last day. He says, I heard the number. I heard them say there's 200 million. So that's interesting because he says, I know there was 200 million of them. So I don't know what that means. But there's going to be a huge army who will attack. It seems like they're coming from the Middle East. When we looked at the map, you weren't good for the map. Some of the countries that are east of the Euphrates, we saw some of those countries, but also that included Russia, that includes China. So I don't know. But the armies from the east are going to gather, and then they're going to come and attack Israel. Now,
you already just answered it. You said China, because I was like, China alone has a 200 million man army, so
right.
200 million makes sense if China's involved. If they have a 200 million army just by themselves.
Right. So I don't know, but we just know it's coming from the east, and it's going to cross over the army from the east. And so it could be that. It could be a collection of different people that all together they total that. We don't know. So but on the map that we looked at, there are certain countries that are east, and then farther east are Russia and China. So now the 2 witnesses. This is all happening during the 6th trumpet. The things are happening during the 6th seal, the 6th trumpet, the 6th bowl. It talks about the two witnesses in Revelation chapter 11, verse 1 through 3.
Then I was given a reed like a measuring rod. And the angel stood, saying, Rise and measure the temple of God, the altar and those who worship there. But leave out the court which is outside the temple, and do not measure it, for it has been given to the Gentiles.
So I want you to measure out the temple, and that was symbolic of the Jews saying, I'm protecting them. Put a rod around the measure, and that's symbolic of God's protection. But the outer court, there was always an outer court outside the temple where the Gentiles could come. He says, don't protect that. Just protect the inner court where the Jews are. I'm going ahead and giving the outside to the Gentiles. Now, there is an image in the book of Revelation that says, that seems to imply that Israel is going to be occupied by some nation. Some nation is going to occupy Israel. And whoever is leader of that nation will eventually turn on the Jews. And there will be a war of the Jews and their allies versus this nation that's occupying and some of the 200 million man army. So he's saying, I want you to protect these Jews, but know that I've given part of this area to the Gentiles. So leave out the court which is on the outside of the temple. That's where the Gentiles are. Do not measure it, for it has been given to them. I'm allowing them to occupy this area. I'm allowing them for a time being to occupy until I come down and say, okay, that's it. Verse 3.
And they will tread the holy city underfoot for 42 months.
Oh, I'm sorry. So that's it. So it seems like for 3.5 years, they will occupy. I said somewhere in Revelation it says that in there, if I just let you read. Anyway, so for 3.5 years, they're going to tread the holy city underfoot. For 3.5 years, this Gentile army or nation will occupy Israel for 3.5 years, or control it somehow. So I don't know if they're physically there or if they're just somehow controlling it. Yes, if they're treading it
I don't know
underfoot.
if this is, but when we went to Israel, we went to the Wailing Wall. The area that the Jews are allowed to go to is underground, and it goes underneath the temple. It's
Right.
like a huge tunnel where you can get the tour and see all the stones of the big wall and all that stuff. But I believe it goes underneath the temple.
No, yeah, it does, and it's actually the old road where Jesus walked, because they built on top of it so many layers that you can actually go in this tunnel underneath, and you can actually walk on the same roads that Jesus walked that were like 40 feet under like modern Israel.
Right.
So others have the other part that they're wailing for, they're trying to get to. They own all that court.
Right. So the top part is owned by the Arabs, the Muslims, the Gentiles who built on top of it, but the Jews are allowed right now to be in the lower part of that area.
Yeah.
So, but there'll be a time when a nation will occupy. That right now the Jews are fighting for that land, but for 42 months, this Gentile nation will occupy this for 3.5 years. So there'll be a time. Now there'll be Jews there, 140,000, or unless that's just symbolic. There'll be a whole bunch who will resist, who won't give in, who won't say, yes, it's okay for these people to be here. They'll resist. Now, it's very, and there'll be a whole bunch of Jews who will fall for it, just like Christians fall for stuff, and other Christians who are aware that that's crazy. So, it's possible that that they come and pretend to be peacemakers. Let us occupy this area and we'll bring peace. There'll be 104,000 Jews who say, I don't trust this. I don't trust this. Because for 3.5 years, there is no war. 3.5 years, they're simply occupying Israel. So they could have been tricked into it, if that makes any sense. Some nation makes a treaty with them, and God was always against treaties. That's what always got Israel in trouble all throughout the Old Testament. Stop making a treaty with the Syrians. Don't make a treaty because you're trusting that nation to protect you instead of trusting that I will protect you. So they always got in trouble for that. Does that make sense? Because you're putting your faith in that nation instead of putting your faith in me. I want to be the only person that you trust. That I'm just saying this. I mean, I'm just making this up. That could include the United States. That could include Israel. You're trusting the United States to protect you instead of trusting me to protect you. Doesn't mean that the United States means any harm. God just doesn't like us to trust somebody else. Right? That person doesn't have to be evil. The point is, you're always calling on that person or that thing instead of calling on me. I got in trouble for that because whenever I got frustrated, there's a friend I would call up first before I would ever even talk to God. I'd have to call my friend, oh, fix I tell Sue.
Yeah.
Before I would talk to God, and then God said, you have to quit that. I want you to tell me first. Because you're putting Sue above me. Because, you know, but it's easy. Because Sue answers immediately and starts talking. You talk to God, hello. So we, you know, it's easier to talk to a person in our minds. But God says, doesn't matter if I answer back. Go to me first. And then I'll send you wherever to get that answer. I would go to Sue first. So that Sue, you know, is a minister. So I'm not saying the United States is evil or anything like that. I'm just saying if Israel is, for example, trusting the United States to save her instead of God, God won't like that. So whoever it is occupying Israel at this time for 3.5 years, it doesn't have to be an evil nation. It just has to be a nation that Israel made a treaty with to protect them instead of making a treaty with God. And God's going to be mad about that. Okay. So, I will also give power, verse 3.
And I will give power to my 2 witnesses, and they will prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth.
So for 3.5 years, there will be 2 prophets who will be saying, this is wrong, we shouldn't be doing this, this nation shouldn't be here, they're here occupying this land, or we made a treaty with them, and they'll be witnessing and saying, this is bad, this is wrong, for 3.5 years. And people, some will listen and some won't. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm listening to all this, and I'm like, wow, this is a whole lot of stuff.
Right.
So in my brain is like, you kind of like answered it. It was like saying, trust God, and I think like, but the bottom line is scary, but you got to actually believe it.
Right.
In order to be able to know that you're going to receive or, you know, what's ahead of you, what's really going on.
Exactly. That's why he's telling us so that, you know, so we'll be aware of what's going to happen. And if you're just connected to God, you'll know.
You don't have to be so confused of it.
It's the people who don't think about God. They'll get fooled. But if you know the Spirit of God, you're not caught up in all of that. If you understand the Spirit of God. If you just, so we were talking about Jim Jones last week and how he came to Good Shepherd, and we went to a bunch of places. But, yeah, many years ago, before they went to Africa. Went to where? Guyana? South America, I knew that. Clearly I didn't. So, all of a sudden I thought they were in Africa. So, if you just want to have a good time, then you can be fooled. If you want the Spirit of God, you can't be fooled. But if you just want to have a good time, somebody can come in and get you all hyped up and all excited, and you go, oh, that's the Lord. No, it's not. It looked like the Lord, but it wasn't. Because the Lord's not always about good times. He's about many things. So if you're craving God, then you won't be fooled. If you're craving some sort of wonderful experience, then you can be fooled. If you're craving just to be rescued from your despair, then the world can offer you all sorts of stuff. But if you want God, that's different. And so a lot of Christians are fooled because we had a, you know, that choir is so good or something, which, and that's fine, the choirs are great, but that's why they're coming to church, for that great choir. They're not coming because of Jesus. So they can get caught up in the choir, and you know, I've watched some guest choirs come in and they started twerking and stuff. I thought, and people were going, yeah! That's not, it was exciting, but that was not Jesus. That was his. So, but if that's what turns you on, then you can get caught up in that sort of stuff. as opposed to really recognizing God. So people will be fooled because they're looking to be rescued as opposed to be looking for God. Okay, so there'll be two witnesses. They're saying, hey, this is not God, this is not God. People will either listen or not listen. And then this is what will happen. The beast from the sea, Revelation chapter 13, verse 1, 3, and 5.
And I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his head a blasphemous name. And I saw one of his heads, and he had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was killed. And all the world marveled and followed the beast.
So all this is happening during the 6th trumpet. So during this time period of the 6th seal, the 6th trumpet, when Israel is occupied, a world leader will rise up. Now it says from the sea, and the sea is a type of the world of the Gentiles. When Jesus said, I'll make you fishers of men, I'll send you out to the sea and you will catch fish, but he obviously means people. So this is just a metaphor. From the world of the Gentiles, I saw, so some Gentile ruler will rise up, and he says it has 7 heads and 10 horns. Now the 7 heads we will later see are 7 kingdoms that have occupied Israel. The Syrians, the Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Romans. That's 6. And this 7th kingdom will occupy Jerusalem. There are 7. We know of 6. There are 7. So a 7th kingdom is going to occupy Israel. Israel will make a pact with that kingdom, or they'll forcefully just take over. I don't know which. And so this beast will rise up and will occupy them, and will explain what the 10 kings mean. But basically, whatever this nation is who occupies Israel will be able to get 10 kings along with them, 10 rulers, presidents, or whatever of other nations to back them up. They'll be in alliance with them. But one of the heads, it says, will look like it's wounded. So this either means a person, or are you out of Ollie? Are you out of papers? Some people walked in. I know that you're good, but do you have any more for them? No. Thank you. Okay. Hey, Lisa's upstairs. She's waiting for you guys. See how quickly he went. Like, yay! Let me out of here. Thank you, Wayne. So there's a king, there's a person or a kingdom which will look like it has stopped. Like there'll be a person who look like they're dead who'll come back to life. Or a person who was dethroned or impeached, I'm making that up, whatever, taken out of office in whatever way, and will come back, make a comeback. Or there'll be a kingdom that will look like nothing, who suddenly comes back to life. That some kingdom that we paid no attention to said, oh, Lebanon, they're messed up, and then suddenly they will have a lot of power. So they'll have a nuclear weapon. Now we have to pay attention to them, right? So I don't know if this is a person or a kingdom. Like when Hitler was persecuting the Jews, he was synonymous with Germany. We were mad at the Germans, we were mad at Hitler, and they were kind of the same, right, at that time, as far as persecuting the Jews. So it's hard to tell if God is talking about the person over the country who's going to be dead and then come back to life, or the country itself that will appear that it's been nothing and then suddenly come back to life. He says, I saw this kingdom that looked like their wound was, that they were wounded and then they were healed. And all the world will marvel and go, oh my goodness, I can't believe he came back, or I can't believe that country came back. Verse 5.
He was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemy, and he was given authority to pursue.
So for 3.5 years, this is probably the person over the country that is trampling Israel underfoot. right? For 3.5 years, some person, some great world peacemaker will come in, make a pact, a deal with Israel for 3.5 years. The 2 witnesses will be saying, no, no, no. Christian martyrs will be saying, no, no, no. The 144,000 Jews will be saying, no, don't trust this person. But the world will say, no, this is a great person who's brought peace. Look what they've done. Okay, then there's the beast from the earth. Revelation chapter 13, verse 11 through 12 and 16 through 17.
Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and it had 3 horns like a lamb, and spoke like a dragon.
So he looked like a lamb, but he spoke like a dragon. So this person is going to say wonderful things, make wonderful promises, but it's the devil. The devil always makes wonderful promises. You can have this, you can have that. But, you know, but it's always a lie. It's something to lure you in. So this is the second beast. Keep going.
And he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and causes the earth that those who dwell in it who worship the first beast, whose dead the womb was healed.
So sometimes it makes me think they're talking about a person, but maybe not. But so there's a sidekick who will cause everybody to worship the whole world. He will have that sort of influence and say, you need to worship this person, they are fantastic. Or you need to follow this nation and do what they say, because this nation has all the answers. So I don't know if it's a nation or a person, but this other beast will be able to convince the whole world that this person has all the answers, that he's the Messiah. Okay, so that was the 6th trumpet, the 6th seal. Now look at the 6th bowl. Yes, sir.
Before you go out,
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question about this.
Yeah.
Now, as this is unfolding, we'll have the scripture, and they'll read it. This is unfolding just as we're reading the scripture.
Yes. Yes, the Christians, the people who studied it, will say, this is just like what the Bible said.
Right.
And they'll know, don't follow this person. Sometimes God has to tell you something in advance, because people can show up and can trick you. But God will give you a funny feeling about the person in advance. If you listen to it, then you'll know, don't believe this. So you'll get a phone call today, the telemarketer call. My mom just got a phone call the other day telling her she'd won $5 million and a new car or something, right? But all you have to do is just give us your account number.
Oh, wow.
And we will transfer the money over to you. So you have to know in advance. Because if you need money, that sounds very tempting. Oh, it's the Lord answered my prayer. Hallelujah. Right? That's how people get fooled in all these scams, because they're hurting, they need money, and then somebody calls up and says, you have won money. You just have to do that. So you go, yeah, you have to have something already on the inside to tell you in advance. Don't listen to that. You have to be warned in advance. People are going to call and lie to you, and then that's how you know.
Yep.
Does that make sense? Because I got a call on my things from Bank of America, but it wasn't. Your account has been defrauded, and call this number and give us your account number so we can verify that it's you. But fortunately, I'd heard in advance people are going to call and do those kind of scams, because I would have done that. I would just call that number and say, yeah, my account number is so and so and so and so, and I heard that. So you have to know in advance, you know what I'm saying? So that's why, Johnny, that's why this is here. So that we'll know in advance when we start seeing it happen. We're going to go, wait a minute, you know that looks good and sounds good. The Bible already says that's going to happen, so I'm not going to trust that. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just thinking back where I think only once a day, used to work on Chase Morgan.
She got a call from Chase Morgan.
Okay. And I'm looking for a process all the time, so I'm checking, double checking my list.
Right.
So this guy said, with a headline from Reuters saying that he gave $3 million in exchange for his taking company.
Right.
So I took him out to investigate.
Right.
And I caught Chase Morgan in New York and found out who this guy is. So the guy's name was Michael Merritt, of course he was known as his name.
Right.
He was an old guy, you know, so was his name Clinton. And I checked him out. And I was like, Wells Fargo in 1986. scam, so.
Right. So people will scam you, but you have to have something in you in advance to warn you. You checked it out. You didn't just say, okay, it's signed. Something was in you. Say, do some investigation first. So this is all just to answer Johnny's question. We've got the blueprint so that we are warned in advance when these things start to happen. We'll go, even though that looks good, even though that sounds good, that's the devil. But you won't know it's the devil unless you've read the scriptures and been warned in advance and you see it happening exactly like God laid it out. That's the only way to know. Otherwise you'll be fooled because it'll all sound good. Oh, they made peace with Israel. Yay, that's great. And this second beast, he's going to come in and he'll convince the world and do all sorts of wonderful things. And we'll go, well, yes, look at all these signs. There are all these miracles that are happening. That must be the Lord. So, and people will be fooled unless you know the Spirit of God. Something in you will say, that's not right. So that's the only way to not be fooled. That's the purpose of this. So the sixth bowl, Euphrates is dried up. And we're just looking at all the sixes. We're just looking at all the sixes. The sixth bowl, the sixth trumpet, the sixth seal. Okay, Revelation chapter 16.
Then the sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates.
We're back in Euphrates again.
And its water was dried up, so that the way of the kings from the east might be prepared.
So the kings, so it's more than one, I feel, right? The kings from the east. So even though China has this huge army, it could be a collection of nations, but we just know they're from the east. Right, and it could be China, we don't know. But some countries from the east, he's saying, I'm drying up the river Euphrates so they can just march on in. Because it's time. It's time. I'm going to allow this to happen. And then I'm going to say, okay, everybody out of the pool. But he's going to allow this confrontation to happen. Go ahead.
And I saw three unclean spirits, like frogs, coming out of the mouth of the dragon.
They were not frogs. They were coming out like frogs. They were just jumping out of his mouth. These lies are coming out of his mouth like frogs. He's not really going to have a frog. If you're black and you saw a frog come out of somebody's mouth, you're not. Say no more. I'm leaving. Right? The frog just came out your mouth. So, fine. So he's saying it was actually unclean spirits that are like frogs. Go ahead.
Out of the mouth of the beast and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are spirits of demons performing signs which go out to the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty.
So it's like demons coming out, but they'll perform signs. They'll be doing great things, right? A miracle to fool the whole world. Well, this must be what all the Christians have been talking about all these years. Look at these great signs. That person was healed, or this happened, or that, or they were able to stop the famine. Or they were, I don't know what the signs are, it just says great sign. So but they're doing great things. And the signs are going out to the whole world to validate how incredible they are. So they will come in and solve world problems. And people go, well, that must be God. Look what great things it was. But if you know the Spirit of God, you will say, even though that person, it sounds like that's the devil. Even though they're solving all this stuff and they've dropped oil prices on whatever the thing is, or this famine has stopped, or they've provided water, whatever it is, something doesn't feel right about that person. So we can't be fooled by what they do, but the world will be, because they'll have done great signs that will just fool everybody. Okay, go on, verse 16.
And they gathered them together to the place called in Hebrew Armageddon.
So everybody will want to follow this person. Look at all this great stuff I've done. Now let's go to war. And people will say, okay. Because if you say that person is bad, we all now hate that person. And that's easy to do nowadays. Is to say, that person's evil, and everybody in that side go, yes, we now agree with you. We now hate them. So they will do great signs to get everybody on their side, and then they'll designate the Jews or somebody as the enemy, And all the armies of the earth will gather and say, well, yes, if they say that person's evil, if they say that group is evil, we all agree. And because that's how we think now. You know, whatever our leaders say, we just follow along and do exactly what that person says. They hate who they hate and love who they love. So the whole world will go. So that's the sixth bowl, the sixth trumpet, the sixth seal. During those, that's the 3.5-year period where a world leader is going to take over, do great signs and wonders aided by his false prophet, occupy Israel, or at least make a pact with Israel, so Israel's trusting with him for 3.5 years, and then there will be a huge war. That is, and it will look like that person is going to take over the world and we're all doomed. Because they will have the majority of people on their side. So then in Revelation chapter 13, verse 18, it says,
Use wisdom, let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666.
so I have continued to say, it is my belief that he's talking about the sixth bowl, the sixth trumpet, the sixth seal. That his number is 6, 6, 6. Be careful when you see these things happening. I've told you in the sixth bowl and the sixth trumpet and the sixth seal what he is going to do. Those other seals, trumpets, and bowls don't mention a person. But in the sixth seal, in the sixth bowl, and the sixth trumpet, that's when I talk about him. So recognize his number. It's 6, 6, 6. But he's also saying 7 is coming. And it's when 7 comes, that's when I come back and defeat him. So his number is just the number of a man. Man can only go to the 6th day, but the 7th day belongs to the Lord. He says, I've established that from the beginning. The 7th day is my day. You get 6 days to do what you want, but give me the 7th, right? So he established that pattern from the beginning, and he's saying it's the same thing. On the 7th day, watch what I do. On the 7th day, I do my thing. On the 6th day, I've stepped back and let him do his thing. But on the 7th day, that's when I do my thing. So it's my belief, as opposed to he's going to actually make everybody tattoo 666 on their hands and foreheads. I think he's saying it's the number 6. Keep looking at the number 6, because that's when you'll recognize him. That's when you'll be able to identify him. So that's just my opinion. If somebody comes up there and tries to tell you to tattoo 666 on you, don't do it. I just don't think anybody's going to. I don't think even the devil's stupid enough to do that, because it's so obvious. Okay, so now let's look at all the 7s. 7 seal, 7 trumpets, etc. Okay, Revelation chapter 8, verse 1 and 2.
When he opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour.
So after all the earthquakes and blah, blah, when the 7th seal is open, peace. There's peace. So don't worry, just get to number 7 and everything's going to be okay. Go on.
And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets.
So now we're going to see what happens in the 7th trumpet. That was the 7th seal. Only thing that happens during the 7th seal is peace. Now let's see what happens when the 7th trumpet sounds.
Then the 7th angel sounded, and there were loud voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world will not become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and we shall reign forever.
Well, so when the 7th trumpet sounds, the kingdoms of this world now belong to God. He's going to come back, and he's going to reign forever and ever. So when the 7th trumpet, all that turmoil and earthquakes and stop. The 7th trumpet comes and sounds, and now they're saying, glory to God, the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our Lord, and he's going to reign forever and ever. So 7 stands for victory. Okay, 7th bowl, Revelation chapter 16, verse 17 through 21.
Then the 7th angel poured out his bowl into the air, and a loud voice came out of the temple of heaven from the throne, saying, it is done.
It's finished. That's what Jesus said on the cross. Go on.
And there were noises and thunderings and lightnings. And there was a great earthquake, such a mighty and great earthquake as had not occurred since men were on the earth. Now the great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell. And great Babylon was remembered before God to give her the cup of wine of the fierceness of his wrath.
So Babylon is a type of Israel that is flirting with the world. So the Jews who dedicate themselves to God, they remain virgins in God's eyes. the Jews that have, and same thing with the church, who are now flirting with the world, he calls it that you're fornicators, you're adulterers, you're a harlot, because you're looking to these other men instead of staying devoted and pure to me. Stay a virgin, stay pure. Do not give yourself to any man, because I'm coming back to claim my bride. Right? So figuratively, we're to stay pure and not align ourselves with anybody else, only align ourselves with God. So now Babylon, who's a type of the nation of Israel, you're now going to get in trouble because of what you've done. Go on.
And every island fled away, and the mountains were not found. And great hail from heaven fell upon men, each hailstone about the weight of a talent. And then blasphemed God because of the plague of the hail, since that plague was exceedingly great.
Right, so now God is coming back, and he's pouring out his wrath. He's going to stop all this turmoil that's been done, and Babylon will get her just reward for having given herself over to these other nations instead of staying pure for God. So now Revelation chapter 17, this is new. But we'll keep going. So Revelation chapter 1 through 6.
Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and talked with me, saying to me, Come, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters.
Who's the great harlot? Israel, the Jews. Because God pledged himself specifically to the Jews. You are my people. He didn't say that to anybody else. We get grafted in as Christians. But the Jews are his people. He did everything for me. Part of the Red Sea. He slew Goliath. He's just done over and over. He's done everything for them. And yet they keep prostituting themselves to these other nations. So that's the great harlot, who once he scattered them, you're now sitting on many waters. There are Jews all over these different nations. They are still gifted by God. They are still having great influence in whatever nations they're in, whatever industry they're in, because God has specifically said you'll be blessed going in and coming out. Your storehouses will be full. Your this will be full. It makes some people jealous. It makes some people hate the Jews because they do so well. God has just simply blessed them. They can't help it. It's not their fault. But people have all keep kicking them out of the nation because suddenly they'll become successful and they want to kill them. They're doing too much. They're making too much money. They're doing it. We got to kill them, and that's our own paranoia. It has nothing to do with the Jews. They're not doing anything wrong other than God's blessing them. The people will hate you when God blesses you. You'll be jealous. But they sit on many waters now. They've been scattered all over the earth, and they are doing, and God's still using them because his gifts and callings are without repentance. If he's blessed that nation, they're always going to do well wherever they are. So, they're the harlot sits on many waters. Verse 2.
With whom the kings of the earth committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with the wine of their fornication.
Go ahead.
So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, which was full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns.
So the woman who was sitting on the beast, again, the beasts are the 7 different kingdoms that Israel had made covenant with over time, right? The 7 different nations. So the woman, you're sitting on top of the beast. So the woman is Israel, sitting on top of the beast that had 7 heads and 10 horns. Go ahead.
The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornication. And on her forehead a name was written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of the abomination of the earth. I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I marveled with great amazement.
So the blood of the saints and the prophet, another place talking about the prophets, every time God would send a prophet to Israel to warn them, don't do that with that nation, don't hook up with the Syrians, don't hook up with the Babylonians, they would kill them. We read about that, I think, in Sunday school last week, where a guy was trying to warn people and they killed him between the altar and the temple. So then they just kept killing people because we don't like bad news and we don't want people to tell us to stop doing what we're doing. So as soon as people come, you shouldn't be doing that. Now, who are you to tell me? Okay, so the Jews killed the martyrs. It said everyone that God sent to them. Revelation 17, chapter 7 through 17. Now we're going to understand the meaning of the woman and the beast, but it's basically what I've already said. Go ahead.
But the angel said to me, Why did you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. The beast that you saw was and is not. Wait, the beast that you saw was and is not.
Yeah, it was. It's not right now. The beast that you saw was, and it is not right now.
And it will ascend out of the bottomless pit and go to perdition.
But it's coming back. So there's a nation that was powerful, is not powerful right now, but it's coming back. Go ahead.
And those who dwell on the earth will marvel, those whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they see the beast that was and is not and yet is.
Right. So is not in power, yet is still existing. So it's not like the nation disappeared from the earth, it just lost all of its power. It's no longer powerful. And we talked about like Persia, Babylon, which is where Iraq is. Babylon was the greatest nation for a while, right? Babylon. You hear about it all in the Old Testament. And then it became nothing for years until oil was found in it. And then suddenly Iraq became great again. And the whole world was, you know, what were they going to do? And so it's like, I'm not saying it's Iraq, it's like some nation that was powerful is not powerful, but now is back in the news and reigning powerful again. Any question? Yes or no?
I'm just saying, a recent parallel would be like Russia, the Cold War, dropped out of power.
Right. Yeah, Russia was powerful and then became really poor and is slowly gaining its foothold again. So it's that sort of thing. I don't know who it is. It's just a nation from the East. I'm just using these as examples. Yes, sir.
Could that be, all this stuff that's going on that's happening, all the bad stuff? Could that be happening because of everybody fighting over the natural resources of the land?
Oh, yes. Yeah. That's man's greed. And yeah, we're fighting over resources, so that's a source of it. And in the first 4 or 5 trumpets, seals, bowls, that's what's going on. People are going to start fighting over resources. There's hunger. There's all that stuff. I'm just skipping to the actual 3.5 year period.
There was I saw a picture of, I think it was somewhere in Saudi Arabia. So they showed a picture of Saudi Arabia in 1900. It was pretty much a barren wasteland.
Right.
And then they showed a picture of it like the 1990s where all these cities, and the only difference was that they found oil there.
Right, right. Same thing with the Arab Emirates or there's like this richest country in the world was nothing for years, nothing. But because they found oil there, now the richest people on earth all live there. It's this powerful nation again. So it's that sort of thing. He's saying it was, it is not, yet it still is. Meaning it still exists, but it's going to come back. So some country, or it could be a person who was alive and we thought and was dead and then they came back in power. Or both, right? So that's the beast that was, is not, and yet is. Let's go on to, yes sir.
I'm seeing something, I think. Just what we're receiving from this. Could that represent some of the things that we go through spiritually?
Yes.
For power?
Yeah.
Not us, but to obtain power over us. The evil one.
Yes.
Is that some of the things that could be going on our members?
Yeah, the devil doesn't have new tricks. So the same thing he does to fool the people, he does to fool us, to fool the nation, is that once we are desperate, you know, we start grasping things. Yeah, I mean, you could use this parallel for just Christian lives in general, or it's the same sort of thing. If that's what you're saying, if you see a parallel in our Christian growth, it's definitely there. Okay, let's keep going. Verse 9.
Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits.
Right. And so there are 7 mountains in Rome, and people think this is Rome because there's 7 mountains in Rome, but it's not. It's Mount Zion, and through 7 periods in history, another nation has occupied Mount Zion. Different nations. Israel sits in Mount Zion, and she's made a pact. So these mountains are 7 times in history when another nation has occupied Mount Zion, the Temple Mount where Israel is. Because when that last beast comes, he also is going to occupy Israel, tread the holy city under 4.5 years. So this is not one city with 7 hills. These are 7 time periods when Israel has been occupied by another nation. Go ahead.
There are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other has yet not come.
So I named the 5 nations that have occupied Israel. And then it says 1 is, which is Rome at the time. At the time this book was written, the book of Revelation, Rome was occupying Israel. So 1 is, and then there's a new kingdom that is yet to come. So actually, it seems like it's not necessarily Iraq or Iran or Syria or Egypt or Greece or Rome. It's another country. It's another country that's coming. Go on. And when he comes, 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other has not yet come. Verse 10.
Oh, and when he comes, he must continue a short time.
Right.
The beast that was and is not is himself also the 8th, and is of the 7th, and is going to perdition.
So he's going to destruction. So he's off, because it's a country that is currently in John's time there, but it's going to disappear and really come back like a new country. Like we call it Persia now, but we're going to call it Iraq later, or it's, you know, it's coming back. But it's really of the 7. It's not a new country. It's one of those 7. It's one of the countries that always deals with Israel, and it will be gone and come back. He says you'll think it's like an 8, but it's not. It's really part of the 7. Right, just a new improved version of one of the 7. Go ahead. And it's going to destruction. Verse 12.
The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no kingdom as yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast.
So the 10 horns, there are 10 other, so when this world power comes and occupies Israel, it will get 10 other nations to be in collusion with it. 10 kings. It could be I'm making this up. It could be the king of Afghanistan, the king of Pakistan, the king of India, you know, what I'm just making up countries. Right, who will be in league and say, yeah, we're backing you up. He says they don't have kingdoms right now. So he says these kings are not alive right now, but they will be alive at the time that this happens. So don't look at the world leaders that are alive right now, he's telling John. They're not alive. They don't have a kingdom yet, but they will during this time period. They'll be in power, and they will join in with this one great beast.
These are of 1 mind, and they will give their power and authority to the beast. These will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings. And those who are with him are called chosen and faithful.
So ultimately they turn on Christianity, they turn on Jesus, and they're actually making war with the Lamb. So at first, we are the world peacemakers and join this alliance, and we're here to make, but they turn on Israel, they turn on all things Christian, and eventually they're making war with the Lamb. They're not literally trying to shoot guns at Jesus, but they're making war figuratively with the message of the gospel. Okay, verse 15.
Then he said to me, the waters which you saw, where the harlot sits, are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues.
Which is what I was already telling you. It's not really the sea, it's people. The harlot, the Jews are sitting in all these different nations. They're sitting in all these different places. And instead of using their gift for good, they're actually aiding and abetting these different nations in turning against the gospel. Go ahead.
And the 10 horns which you saw on the beast, these will hate the harlot, make her desolate and naked, eat her flesh and burn her with fire.
So Israel gets turned on. And this happens to the Jews all the time. They become successful, and then that nation turns on them. So first they're making a compact with the harlot, and then they turn on her and try to kill her. Go ahead. Verse 17.
For God has put it into their heads.
To their hearts.
I'm sorry. For God has put it into their hearts to fulfill his purpose, to be of 1 mind, and to give their kingdom to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled.
So here's what he's saying. when Moses went to Pharaoh to let my people go, that hardened his heart. Just like the sun will harden clay, it will melt wax. When you hear the words of God, it either melts you or it hardens you. And so Pharaoh attacking Moses actually fed into God's plan.
Didn't he?
And so as God parted the Red Sea and the Jews went through, and then Pharaoh said, I'm going to attack them, and went out and attacked them, the waters closed on him. It's like that was all part of God's plan. Because the story that everyone knows in every nation on the earth is Moses and the Red Sea. God got all kind of glory and all kind of good press from that. So because that story went everywhere. Same thing with Noah and the ark. Every nation has a Noah and the ark story. So he says when the beast attacks Israel, God's allowing that. He's saying, I'm allowing that because I'm about to show up and drown them in the Red Sea. It's okay. They will attack Israel because that's what ultimately the devil always does, but then I always win in the end. So God will put it in their hearts to attack the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. So he's saying that's all part of God's plan. You try to stop it, but it's part of the plan. Don't worry about it. Verse 18.
And the woman whom you saw is that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth.
And so he's saying that that great city, and it goes on to identify it as Israel, because it says the city where Jesus was crucified, actually is in league. The people from that city, like I was saying, are in league with all the people of the earth. Again, it's just a gift. It's a gift where God has gifted the Jewish people, and when they put their hands to it, they prosper. Basketball players say a very thing that's derogatory, I think, but they mean it nicely. But when a basketball player gets a contract, they will say to each other, now make sure you go get you a Jewish lawyer. Because he will protect your money, he will make you rich, he'll make you a great deal. Now, an Italian lawyer will do well too, and a black lawyer, they got a black lawyer. So that's a bigoted thing to say, but it has some truth to it. You know what I'm saying? So because God has blessed, if you ever make any sort of deal somewhere and there's a Jewish person in that with you, you say, oh, hallelujah. God blesses, God gives that person, whether they know or not, whether they are in line with God or not. God has given this person a gift, and so I'm going to exploit it. So he says they are in league with all the kings of the earth. But God is now going to punish them because they're not using their gift. And it's the same thing like Calhoun was saying, same thing with us. We're punished when we don't use our gifts for God. He's gifted everybody in this room. We all have gifts. And we can either sing in the nightclub or sing in the church. And I'm not mad at somebody singing in the nightclub. I'm saying, but you can use your gift that God gave you to do good with it or to do evil. And when people call up with these scams and stuff, I think, why don't they put this energy into just making an honest living? Because some of these scams are very intricate and they're amazing. You think you could have started 5 businesses. As smart as you are, the thing that you just came up with, you could have been doing it legally. But they're doing it, they're using it for evil. But they are gifted. The people come up with these scams, that's a gift. But they're just using it for evil, right? God doesn't take the gift away, He just eventually blows you up with it. So you still have that gift, but if you keep using it for evil, it'll eventually will come back on you. And that's what He's saying. They're in line, they're in league with all the kings of the earth, and now it's going to turn on them. It's going to turn on them. And then that nation that they're helping out, that person's going to turn on that Jewish person and attack them. So they're thinking, oh, we made a deal. But suddenly, the devil's going to enter that person's heart, and they're going to suddenly, I hate Jews suddenly, even though you made me all this money, I'm trying to kill you now. So that's why they have to be protected. And He's going to put a seal around the 144,000, because when people turn on them, God's going to protect those who have given their heart. Those who have given their hearts to the devil. And that's the same with Christians. God's like, I'm not going to protect you anymore. Because I've told you what to do, and you haven't done it. So now the final exam is coming, and you're going to pass or fail. So we're going to keep reading from chapter 17 on. Are there any questions? Okay, so welcome back. We're so glad that anytime you walk in, I know it's going to be a good